We're going to go back right now to the Wisconsin State Senator, Chris Larson. I think we are going to try to keep him on the line. He is in Illinois, not here in the Capitol, where he usually would be. State Senator Larson, why don't you continue with what you were saying about what you are demanding happen and your reaction to the vote taking place in the Assembly, why you are saying that that's precisely why you're not coming back with the other 13 Democrats to the state Senate.
Right, thank you. Yeah, this bill is something that was put together not by lawmakers in Wisconsin, but by, corporate influencers who wanted to do a fast push to take away a lot of power in Wisconsin and give it to a governor who's answering calls for billionaires instead of the regular people, and hearing the calls of tens of thousands of people who've been speaking out at the Capitol, out in the rotunda, out on the streets, as well as over 100 hours of public testimony about how this bill will affect their lives. It was introduced under the guise of a budget repair bill, but there's parts of it that actually increase the deficit and will cost us federal funds. It was pushed by Club for Growth with ads well before any lawmaker or anybody in the public had ever even seen it. So this bill does a lot to reverse the Wisconsin tradition of having workers' rights, of the things that we have founded here, and it tries to set us back. So that's why we're standing where we are. When we saw how fast this was moving and how it was being pushed as if a foregone conclusion, we had to step away, as it's been put, as a filibuster with feet, in order to slow this process down and grind it to a halt. And in that time, in this last 8 days, the public has had an opportunity to read it and see what's actually in this bill. And I know I mentioned some of those things, the no-bid contracts, the giveaway of Medicaid, Medicare, and senior care, and obviously the loss of worker rights that have been fought and died for the last 50 years. So this is really probably the worst bill to come in Wisconsin, based off the public testimony, based off of the influence that it's had behind it, and it's got to be stopped. And that's why we stand where we are. We saw what happened in the Assembly late last night, where they tried to jam this through without people knowing what was going on, and it's just unacceptable. I know John said that it was a party line vote, and it largely was, but there was 4 brave Republicans who decided to stand up and vote against it, who listened to the voices of their constituents, who in about 62% of them are saying this isn't acceptable, and they said this was, they voted down. And so we're hoping the same thing happens in the Senate with Republicans, and we're able to dispose of this bill completely and move on as a state.
Senator Larson, this is Juan Gonzalez in New York. I wanted to ask you, how long are you prepared to stay out of the state, and how do you respond to those critics who say that you are basically shirking your responsibility to be in the Capitol and passing legislation?
Right. Well, when we originally left, I took a toothbrush and an extra shirt, so it kind of showed how long I was expecting to stay away. Obviously, it's been longer than that. We bought some clothes, and we're good here for a little while. But until we have a real conversation, Walker really threw the negotiating table out the window when he had introduced this bill and said, there is no negotiation. This is going to be how it is. And I think that really, soured the tone with the public, and that's why so many people immediately took to the streets on this. That's not how we do things. As John said, democracy isn't something that happens for 13 hours, one day every 2 years on Election Day. It happens all the time. There's room for public input, and not even being able to have a conversation is just unacceptable. If you watch the 60 hours of riveting debate, it wasn't so much a debate as it was one side chiding the other and trying to bring attention to some of these provisions with little to no response by the other side. So until we're able to engage in a real debate, until we're able to throw this bill out and actually move forward with a budget repair bill and move forward with the real business of Wisconsin, we can't come back. And for those who chide us for being gone right now, we were elected independently, and Wisconsin has a strong tradition of independence. We were elected independently by our constituents to stand up for them. And that's exactly what we're doing on this bill. It doesn't matter where our feet are. We're standing up for our constituents.
Wisconsin State Senator Chris Larson, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Again, he is in Illinois with the other Democratic state senators. There are 14 of them. Their pictures are all over the state capitol. They're being hailed here, the Wisconsin 14. This is Democracy Now!, and we are in the state capitol in Madison, Wisconsin. I referred earlier to this conversation that the governor had that has now become famous, certainly through Wisconsin and beyond. The conversation that Governor Walker had, an infamous 20-minute phone call with a man he thought to be the billionaire campaign donor David Koch, who is a funder of the Tea Party movement. During the prank call, Walker admitted he considered sending agent provocateurs to disrupt the peaceful protesters here in Madison. This excerpt from the call begins with a blogger named Ian Murphy from Buffalo, New York, impersonating David Koch.
We'll back you any way we can. But what we were thinking about the crowds was planting some troublemakers.
You know, the only problem with because we thought about that. The problem with, or my only gut reaction to that would be, right now, and the lawmakers I've talked to have just completely had it with them. The public is not really fond of this.
Yes, that was Governor Walker here in Wisconsin, speaking with the man he thought was David Koch. Well, on Thursday, the Madison police chief, Noble Ray, was asked about the governor's statement. The police chief said, quote, "I find it very unsettling and troubling that anyone would consider creating safety risks for our citizens and law enforcement officers." He also said something else when asked if he was being political. He said that it certainly wasn't him who was entering into the world of politics. He said it was Governor Walker who was entering into the world of public safety, and that's why he felt he wanted to talk to the governor, a conversation that, at least at this point, it hasn't been reported that he's had. Speaking of police, we're joined right now by Jim Palmer, Executive Director of Wisconsin's Professional Police Association. What is your response to this part of the conversation that has troubled so many people, the idea of the governor having considered sending in provocateurs?
Sure. You know, our members are incensed. We've had law enforcement officers from all across the state come and work at these rallies and work at these events for the last 2 weeks, and they have been very impressed by how peaceful everyone has been. And they've commented that to me personally. So for the governor or someone on his staff to even consider doing something that could put officers or members of the public in harm's way is extraordinarily troubling. And our members are very disturbed by it.
For people who aren't familiar with unions, why is collective bargaining so important?
Well, it gives the employees a voice at the table, and we think that the people who provide the services ought to have an opportunity to provide some input on how those services are provided. And we can make services delivered in a more effective and cost-efficient manner, and it really, I think, it benefits everybody, the taxpayers and the local governments alike.
Malin Mitchell, the head of the Firefighters Association, talking about being involved with this. Firefighters are exempted. They're not going to be hit by Governor Walker, and the same with the police. So why be here?
That's true. Well, you know, it's interesting because many law enforcement officers tend to be conservative, but they know the difference between right and wrong, and they view this as completely wrong. And law enforcement officers, again, from all across the state are proud to stand with their fellow devoted public employees and oppose something that they just view as absolutely and morally wrong.
What do you understand is going to happen this weekend? Hundreds, if not 1,000 people slept here last night. Tens of thousands crowd in here during the day, chanting, talking about democracy in the workplace, talking about taking back their state. At some point, they very much fear, especially this weekend, that they're going to be thrown out. Who's going to do this throwing out if the police are on their side?
Well, that's a good question. I think that, law enforcement officers will do their job, and they'll do it to the best of their training. I hope and have every expectation that it won't come to that, and that someone in the Department of Administration or the governor's office will decide that, everything has been peaceful, and we ought to maintain it and keep it that way.
And words to police officers around the country right now.
I'm being contacted by officers in Massachusetts and Ohio, and everyone's watching. And they are very supportive of what our members are doing here and our organization's position. And again, even though we are exempted, we want to stand with our fellow public employees.
We want to thank you very much for being with us. Jim Palmer is Executive Director of the Wisconsin's Professional Police Association. You represent?
Nearly 11,000 members from all across the state. 11,000
members here in Madison, Wisconsin. We're going to go to break right now. When we come back, we're going to hear from people all over Madison, Wisconsin, and hear also from the protests that took place outside of the Koch brothers, well, a new office that they've opened up in town. This is Democracy Now! We're broadcasting about the uprising in Madison, the uprising in Wisconsin. Stay with us. Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report, and those are the firefighters' bagpipes. This is quite an amazing scene here. Musicians have gathered. Tom Morello of Night Watchman gave a big concert the other night. People are coming from all over the country, but mainly it's people based right here in Wisconsin. Wisconsinites are descending on the Capitol from every corner of.
Always remember, no matter what Governor Walker, the Mubarak of the Midwest, says, this land is your land. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless sky.
You're listening to This Is What Democracy Looks Like, Wisconsin's Worker Uprising, produced by Workers Independent News in conjunction with WORT Community Radio, Madison. I'm Doug Cunningham.
I see my people, some are grumbling, and all are wondering if this land's still made for you and me. Tell them!
Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking with the unions.
Wisconsin's working families are vowing to last one day longer than the governor trying to rip away collective bargaining rights, as tens of thousands of people kept up the robust, passionate battle to defend the American dream in Madison. The Madison-based South Central Labor Federation officially endorsed a general strike if collective bargaining rights are taken from Wisconsin public employees. Joining the Madison resistance rallies, IBEW President Ed Hill urged continued solidarity in this epic fight for workers' human rights.
The powers are all lined up against you with everything that they have. But we will resist every assault and carry the day, won't we? And the only way to do that is through solidarity.
We asked President Hill if workers and their unions should be prepared for a general strike if these collective bargaining rights are taken away from public workers.
I think we should be.
Wisconsin AFL-CIO President Phil Neuenfeld derided a New York Times article that said that Wisconsin union solidarity was fraying.
Because I don't see it. What I'm seeing is working families and unions coming together like they've never come together before.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Thousands continue to pack the state capitol rotunda, and hundreds are sleeping overnight in the rotunda, keeping a constant vigil in defense of collective bargaining rights. Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin president Malin Mitchell said he and other firefighters slept in the Capitol Rotunda with other protesters Monday night.
They told us that the governor was possibly going to kick everybody out at midnight. But I like to think and I like to hope that because we slept there, that they decided maybe to do that another night.